PACD, for those of you who are not aware, is a nonprofit organization that represents Pennsylvania's 66 conservation districts. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing us to address the House Agriculture Committee on the vital role that conservation districts play in preserving Pennsylvania's natural resources. Conservation districts are actually subdivisions of state government that were created by state law to promote the protection, the maintenance, the improvement, and the wise use of land, water, and other related resources within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Conservation districts are responsible for the implementation of both urban and agricultural conservation programs. Pennsylvania's county conservation districts were established in 1945 when the General Assembly passed the Soil Conservation District Act. For over 60 years, the state's 66 conservation districts have served as leaders addressing the local natural resource concerns at the county level. Conservation districts were initially established to promote the value of conserving soil and water to farmers. Today's conservation districts have evolved to provide expertise in almost every area of natural resource conservation. Conservation districts continue to help people and communities manage the natural resources in their county. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to sincerely thank you as the members of the House Agriculture Committee and the General Assembly as a whole for the recent passage of Senate Bill 1020, which updated the Conservation District law and allowing the districts to further their mission. To give you a better idea of the scope of the programs that conservation districts work with, I've delineated them in your testimony below. But as you can see, there are over 20 different programs that conservation districts in the aggregate are involved with. And let me remind you that most of these programs do not have state funding associated with them at all. Please allow me to take a moment to discuss the state's appropriation to the districts. In June of 2005, a study from the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee stated, and I quote, "Despite their importance, many conservation districts are struggling for funds. Today, in August of 2008, many of those conservation districts are still struggling with that much-needed state funding." Each year, for the past 8 budget cycles, the governor at that time held the conservation district line item static within the Department of Agriculture, and the same for the Department of Environmental Protection for the past 10 years. Unfortunately, inflation over that same decade increased over 26%. As you can well imagine, conservation districts have indicated that they have experienced increased costs during that same period, especially for health care costs for their employees. But thankfully, the legislature has provided some additional funding and has continually replaced much of the funding that has been removed in each of the preceding gubernatorial budget proposals. The LDFC report, as I referenced earlier in my testimony, also addresses the State Conservation Commission policy for a 50% funding for Conservation District Fund Allocation Program, which is the CDFAP, which supplies the financial support to partially staffed conservation districts. These funds are intended to cover 50% of the district manager's salaries and benefits, 50% of the district's first technician, second technician, and certain administrative expenses. Unfortunately, the Commonwealth has never satisfied the recommended appropriations. Consequently, conservation districts are not receiving the much-needed state dollars to fully service their county residents and businesses. Clearly, a deficiency in state funding hinders the activities of the local districts. If you look at your testimony again, in order of priority, the PACD requests that the Commonwealth appropriate the following amounts and transfer to the Conservation District Fund to meet certain needs. I won't go over all of these, but as you can see, most of the money that is needed is specifically for cost share for the managers, for the first technicians, the second technicians, for administrative assistants to run the conservation districts. And then there are other programs that we feel are priorities for the conservation districts. For instance, the agricultural conservation technicians and engineers, the farmland preservation program, the leadership development program, the ombudsman program, which is a program to help the community and the farmers work together without going to such issues as going to court or to work out their differences. and additional personnel to provide technical assistance as outlined in the Fair Share for Clean Water Funding Plan. The 2005 LDFC report stated that future consideration should be given to providing districts with a dedicated source of funding. Dedicated funding would greatly simplify the Conservation District annual budgeting process. PACD has researched some other state funding sources for Conservation District activities and possible avenues Pennsylvania should consider. One such idea is to add a surcharge to DEP environmental fines and penalties, partially funding Conservation District activities. This revenue source, similar to the CAT fund, will be assessed to those who violate, as currently the CAT fund is assessed to violate speeding violations and speeding limits in Pennsylvania roadways, but would not diminish the fines and penalties collected by DEP. It would be an additional charge to those who violate environmental laws and regulations. Representative Ron Miller introduced House Bill 2491 to provide the mechanism needed for the implementation of this program. While this funding source would not be sufficient for all Conservation District activities, it would be estimated to provide approximately $1.8 million in new funds per year. The PACD is also open to suggestions from members of the House Agriculture Committee and other interested parties to formulate a viable dedicated funding solution for Conservation District activities. Recently, PACD distributed a paper entitled Achieving Pennsylvania's Energy Independence Goals while Strengthening Conservation in Pennsylvania, the critical role of Pennsylvania's conservation districts. The report is attached to my testimony, which you have in front of you. In essence, the paper shows that conservation district services will be increasingly necessary as emphasis in biofuel production alters farm operations and the need for updated and improved conservation plans. Technical assistance will be needed to keep pace with the increased biofuel crop production, including training and assistance pertaining to conservation practices. Additionally, new technologies to generate energy from combustion, digestion, and gasification from manure and other feedstocks need to be accompanied by proper nutrient management. Further, renewable resources in Pennsylvania will not be limited to food crop production. Pennsylvania forests hold the potential to provide significant biomass for methanol production and currently non-utilized portions of the harvested wood products. Finally, alternative energy sources such as development of geothermal systems, wind and solar power, and the development of small-scale hydropower will necessitate consideration of additional environmental impacts such as erosion and sedimentation control. The end result of amplified domestic energy production could be increased nutrient pollution if not accompanied by conservation measures, and should be seen as an opportunity to greatly expand natural resource conservation activities. At our last annual meeting, which was held here in State College about a month ago, the following resolution was passed. PACD encourages conservation districts to work with and encourage Penn State Cooperative Extension and other organizations to educate landowners about gas exploration, leasing, and development, and to use conservation districts as a resource. PACD also encourages DEP Bureau of Oil and Gas Management to work with conservation districts to ensure water resource protection. This policy statement is another way conservation districts are assisting local communities and the residents with technical assistance in energy production and conservation practices. The districts continue to stay on the cutting edge of natural resource management, and they're desperately in need of the state's financial support to augment energy-related conservation activities. So in conclusion, as Joel mentioned, conservation districts in the Pennsylvania Fair Share for Clean Water Coalition are requesting an additional $10 million in state funding to continue promoting and implementing conservation programs across the Commonwealth. The conservation districts work to protect water, soil, and other resources through many programs and services. The additional funding will be used for personnel and programs to promote the important environmental stewardship activities that districts already utilize. And I'll also be happy to answer any questions you may have.